we're all set. Thank you very much. So today I'll be opening the first round of presentations, and I thought after we could go in reverse direction. So I'll start, and then Grace will second me, and she's a third-year PhD student at the University of Essex. And then hopefully Khadija will be able to join. She's also a PhD researcher in the SOAS University of London in the Department of Development Studies. And she is researching issues around security and governance in Nigeria. Okay, so I'll try to be as strict with the time as possible. Well, so just to summarize my main points, I'm looking at the context, like in the context of energy transition, and lithium has been framed as a key mineral due to its key role in lithium-ion batteries, the name says it, of course, which, of course, is a key component of computers, mobiles, and electric cars. And I am drawing on a 12-month ethnography that I carry out in Chile, in the Atacama Desert and in Santiago. And I'm looking at the hegemonic narratives around development in the context of lithium extraction in the Atacama salt flat in Chile. And the paper analyzes how interconnected dynamics of rural and urban development associated with lithium extraction express the contradiction of a persistent urban-oriented neo-colonial narrative and the implications of that. And the Atacama Desert plays a key role in highlighting neo-colonial views of the rural as an empty space, a narrative that legitimized the destruction of certain ecosystems to bring modernity to other ecosystems, in this case, urban places. And equally, as capitalism expands and national development remains tied to ideas of urban progress and modernity, paid work constitutes the only option that indigenous and rural communities have to access formal systems of education, of healthcare, technology, and like the broader modernity. And so in this regard, lithium extraction appears as a possibility for Likanantai people to work closer to their ancestral lands, revitalizing increasingly abandoned villages. But nevertheless, they also acknowledge the temporality of mining companies and the problematic future, as there is a lot of uncertainty of what will happen when the companies leave the hole. Therefore, extractivism installed as the present and future death. And these industries and imaginaries perpetuate a dependency cycle of these dynamics, and therefore the effort towards thinking decolonial and alternative futures comes with more urgency than ever. Thank you. Grace, please. You're muted. You're muted, yeah.
I was just talking away. So good morning, everyone. And thank you for being here. My research topic is corporate social responsibility and climate change. And I'm looking at the oil and gas industry of Nigeria. So issues around corporate social responsibility have attracted so much interest and debates over time, including the growing awareness of climate change and accompanying challenges. When we think or talk about climate change, we very quickly also consider the causes, the impacts, and the solutions to climate crisis. Although the oil and gas industry is not restricted, climate change issues are not restricted to the oil and gas industry and cannot be solved by the industry alone. It is a highly visible culprit in view of its ecological footprint, leading to criticisms from stakeholders and hence the industry's uptake of corporate social responsibility and environmental reporting. The main contribution of my study is to discern how multinational and indigenous oil and gas corporations in Nigeria understand climate change, because this invariably plays into how they respond to or deal with the challenges. Therefore, it unravels how and if climate change considerations impact on their policies, the operations and initiatives of the corporations. The study also provides insights on how multinational, on the two types of entities, multinational and indigenous, engage with climate change phenomenon associated with their operations, and how these change or how they relate to CSR in a developing countries context. Because CSR practices are distinct and nation specific. Moreover, some prior studies had said that the pressures faced by multinational corporations like globalizations, pressures from consumers and NGOs that are faced by multinational companies may not equally hold true for indigenous corporations. So these contributions are in response to the scarcity of knowledge of the sub-Saharan Africa, and also to reveal the industry's commitment to item 13 of the UN's Climate Agenda 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. Well, hopefully we'll have more time to discuss very interesting research. Khadija, very happy that you could join us. If you could explain the main issues of your presentation in 2 minutes, please.
Hi, I'm sorry for joining in late. I'm actually calling in from Canada, so it's around 5 a.m. here. So about my research, I'll start with the key argument, and that is that my key argument for the research is that adequate security can only be achieved by encouraging multi-stakeholder partnership that is rooted in local realities for security provision and governance in Africa. This perspective supports that security is everyone's business and reflects the idea that all hands must be on deck to help solve the problem of insecurity in Africa. Then in terms of the question that I'm picking to address, I'm going to be looking at the second question, which looks at the limits and possibilities.
Sorry, no worries. The question we'll address in the second round.
Okay, yeah, so sorry, just trying to, yeah, okay, that's fine, yeah, thank you. Oh, sorry, my video is supposed to be on, I think, yeah, sorry about that. Hi, everyone. Yeah.
So if you would like to say anything more to place your research or the contributions.
Yeah, so my research is on informal security systems in Nigeria, to be specific. I'm looking at the non-state security system, because we have both the informal security system and then we have the semi-formal, I call them the semi-formal. And the difference between these two is that one works formally or legally with the state security system, while the other ones do not work legally with the state security system. Yeah, that's the major, that's what my research is about. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And if you want to address the question, if you could say which question are you addressing? So there were several questions that each of us will address freely. And one of those questions was, what limits and possibilities do you see in the role of the state to address the issues that you tackled?
Yeah. So for me, because I'm looking at insecurity, I'll summarize it into three. And the first one is the inability of agencies to collaborate effectively. That is the formal system collaborating with the other agencies, especially in terms of intelligence gathering. I know this is very obvious looking at Nigeria's security situation, which clearly shows that the state undervalues people's contribution to intelligence gathering. A very good example happened about 3 days ago. I don't know if anyone heard about the prison break that happened in Nigeria, in the capital city. And after it happened, a lot of people came up to say, oh, we tried to contact the formal agency to give them intelligence about this, but they were not taking us seriously. And the second one is the way the formal system was set up. And for this, you look at the inadequacy of the formal system, which is largely rooted in, the colonial system, the way it was formed in the 1930s during the colonial period. And it was formed then with the view to create an ethnically diverse police force that would replace the traditional system. But, discourses have shown that this has not really been the goal. The goal has not been achieved over the years. And we have to revisit the main reason why we have to have this, the state police in most of African countries. And lastly, another major issue is the fact that the formal system and its officers are estranged to the areas they police. And as a result, police officers are usually viewed as outsiders within the communities that they serve. And the informal systems whose members are part of the community they police are seen as better security providers in these places. Yeah, so that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Grace, if you would like to respond to the question in 2 minutes.
Okay. The limits of the state's role to address gas flaring as an inducer of climate change lies in its culpability. The fact that the Nigerian government operates a joint venture partnership with every corporation in the industry implies that it is equally or even more responsible for the impacts of exploration and production activities. Empirical evidence suggests that corporations have a desire to, and they most adamantly comply with regulations, although these regulations are lax. And regulatory laxity appears to flow from the economic power the industry has on the nation, including government's own participatory interest. It therefore undermines its ability to, and it also appears impracticable for the state to be an impartial arbiter between oil and gas corporations and local communities on issues of gas flaring and associated impacts. The perceived weakness in enforcing and monitoring the industry seems to be less about the government's ability than it is about its disincentive to enforce because of its own interest, right? So, and I will also say the possibilities of the state's role are ample. Government possesses the power to regulate the industry through stricter policy and regulatory instruments. And data evidence has shown that the corporations are eager to abide by regulations. Some studies have also suggested that formal structures like regulations are the best ways to acknowledge and operationalize the principles of justice. However, when the country is focused on short-term financial benefits without consideration of social injustices on local communities and already vulnerable group, it negates any effort in the direction, but rather breeds further injustice. So the state, yes, it has the capability, but is it doing it? No, because of its own interest and the country's supposedly interest. So that's the end of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. I sort of mixed the questions to pose a reflection. So in the case of lithium extraction in Chile, I see that the Chilean state has been a promoter of many processes of colonization and obscuring the diversity under the idea of the national project. In this regard, the state has both installed and promoted capitalism and colonialism actively, and politicians and economic elites have worked for their own benefit. Indeed, it was interesting to see that among indigenous people that I talked with during my fieldwork, there were a few that were very critical of the role of the state as a Western, as part of the Western civilization, in making them increasingly hard to reproduce their own culture. For example, one woman told me that she did not like the Western medicine, referring to the healthcare system, the public healthcare system. And that she was told by her father how to heal herself and how to treat different diseases. But because mining had made water scarce, because the national states have imposed territorial boundaries to their ancestral territories, it was harder and harder for her to preserve this knowledge, these practices, and their culture. So in this context, it's interesting to know that in a way, when hegemonic classes say the desert has nothing but minerals, it works as both a production of a territory in present, but also in the future, because they are creating a landscape that has nothing but only minerals. And they indeed collapse all the ecosystems and all the other resources, human and non-human, to extract those minerals. So they actively create a desert, like a desertic or desert, with nothing but minerals. And then it is very hard to engage with the changes that are needed to overcome climate change and the environmental crisis. So because we have already destroyed all the ecosystems and all the ancient knowledge to live in them or with them, it will be really almost nothing left. Okay, so I don't know if there are any questions in the chat. No. I wanted to, I don't know if, well, anyone has a question. If not, I wanted to ask, well, first to you, Grace, that, well, I thought your research and your presentation was very interesting. Were very interesting both. And you mentioned that you were looking at both multinational and indigenous corporations in the oil industry in Nigeria. And I was wondering if there are differences that you saw in your findings regarding those two different types of companies, so the multinational and the indigenous corporations, and if they are, as companies, also different.
Yes, differences as far as their operations, as far as the way they relate with the communities. The multinational corporations appear more incentivized to deal a little bit, not deal like dealing with climate change per se, but having better relationship with the communities or taking care of their basic needs, while negating the things that matter. Talking about climate, we're talking about climate change, you're talking about gas flaring, but you're offering or taking care of CSR needs that are remote, very remote from the issues at stake. So when you look at it in that context, you say, yes, the communities, they endear more to the multinational corporations because they seem to be taking care of them. You know, when the government fails in its role to provide basic amenities in these communities, and these companies are providing them. So the communities will choose the multinationals as the better of two evils. So that's kind of the language. They're all not good, but this is a better guy. I would rather deal with this guy. So they are actually better. And I think this is because of the duality, institutional duality from their parent companies outside of Nigeria, and influence from shareholders. So, and then they have bigger financial capacity than the local corporations or the indigenous corporations. So those are the reasons, or appear to be the reasons for the differences. Because when you talk about, okay, we'll talk about gas flaring, and these multinationals, their reputation matters a lot to them. And that's one of the reasons they give to you, oh, we can't break regulations, we have to do this, because if we don't do it, somebody even described deferring regulation as an error with fatal consequences. And fatal consequences is money. They get to pay money, they get to pay fines if they break regulations. So if you're talking about you're paying fines for gas flaring, and then the multinational companies even say the regulators come to the premises to monitor their meters to ensure that the meters are functioning right. They're functioning right so that they are reporting and being billed appropriately. Whereas some other companies, indigenous, from the people I interviewed, someone said, we don't even have meters at our premises. We are billed by estimates. So that's already a loophole for misappropriation of funds. So those are the differences you see, that some people, yes, we're abiding by regulations. They are inspecting our facility, they're inspecting our meters, and the other companies, same industry, same work they're all doing. We don't have a meter. They bill us by estimates. So how do you now reconcile these? So yeah, there are these differences.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, well, it's very very interesting how, yeah, I mean, in Chile, I think it's similar in the sense that the multinational companies build upon stronger standards, so to speak,
Exactly, yeah,
than the national ones.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, they are accountable for their acts, even in like looking at the international climate, but like in the international, they have international stakeholders,
Exactly.
and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it's well, it's quite contested, and also, please, if anyone has a question, feel free to put it in the chat. I was also well, very, very intrigued and interested on your research, Khadija, and I wanted to ask you, how do informal institutions, how do you see that in your research? How do informal institutions challenge the formal institutions? What challenges and opportunities do you see in the way that these communities have approached security in their neighborhoods? But at the same time, would you say that it's in a way that the opportunities they have now is because they are not institutionalized yet, or the other way around? Well, yeah, if you could.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. So from my research, one very key thing that came out is you find these informal systems mostly in low-income neighborhoods. And it's very funny because some of these places don't even have a police post, not so called police station. So, these systems, they say they're emerging, but they're re-emerging in these places to supplement the formal system, the formal security systems. And again, if you read a lot of literatures, they sort of put these systems that they are contesting power with the formal system, but really what they're doing is that they're complementing the formal system, because again, this is just a part of my work, but if you look at the whole thing, these places are some of the major crime hotspots in Nigeria, for example, and these systems are emerging. For example, my study area, it started, I think 2017, the informal system there, so in 2017. And before then, the security system in that place was so bad. So when they came into, the whole system, they really, really helped in reducing crime. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Kaduna State in Nigeria. And this used to be one of the major, crime hotspots in the northern part of Nigeria. You have the issue of Boko Haram, you have kidnappings, and all the sort of things coming up. At a point in time, the states tried to ban them because they felt like they were very brutal in the way they dealt with crime. But they explained to me that this is because there's this very notorious gang, they call them the Ensara Suka, within that neighborhood that used to operate, and they had kind of grounded their system, like they had this gang that controlled the whole neighborhoods. So for them to be able to root out this kind of crime, they have to be very brutal in the way and they handle them. So, I think someone was killed as a result of one of the ways we're trying to deal with crime in that place. And the government was like, you know what, we're going to ban you. But just about 2 months into the banning, the crime situation in that place became so bad again, and they had to bring them back into the system. Yeah, so I hope I was able to address your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also very interesting how, yeah, in a way, how the state plays a role that usually makes things more complicated rather than helping, in this case, informal organizations, but that are dealing with the issues.
And sorry, quickly, just to add, I think one thing I forgot to say again is, this system, they don't just work in isolation, they work with the traditional governance system. in Nigeria that has been in existence even before the colonial period. So, you know, for example, their structure, they have the head of the traditional systems being in charge, and then they have members of the community, you know, forming some other parts of the system to help the neighborhoods.
Yeah, that was very, very interesting how, in a way, of course, it's more complicated than just like the good fact that you can rely on your like your own social structures, that they are known for everyone, that you know how to act, and then you can strengthen them, rebuild them in a way that you can challenge like current problems, or even aim to solve those problems, which I think it's very empowering. But at the same time, as I think our research shows, like also Grace, the contested role of the state, I think that you have also reflect on, and yeah, I think would be interesting to see ways forward to, in a way, build stronger states, for example, that could oversee and regulate effectively issues around the environment and crime, but that at the same time have like the elasticity to receive and incorporate and work with informal organizations, and particularly grassroots organizations. Well, I don't know if anyone has another question that they want to pose or reflection.
Yeah, I have a question for Grace. Yeah, I was going through her paper, and very interesting paper, by the way. I noticed that, I'm sorry if I'm not putting this the right way, because I think I'm still putting. You chose about 6 organizations, both multinational and national or indigenous, for your study, if I'm correct.
Yes, please.
Yes. So how did you come about the 6 institutions? Was it picked randomly, or did you have some criteria that you put in place to choose them? Because I feel that is going to greatly affect the results that you have at the end of your research.
Yeah, the multinationals for sure, just randomly. We have actually like maybe 6 of them, 6 multinationals or 5, but I picked 3. And then I wanted to pick 3 indigenous. And the criteria was at least one of the indigenous had to be one that's bought over, because these multinationals, some of their what do you call it now, locations were sold to indigenous corporations. So I wanted one of them at least to be one that bought over existing assets of a multinational, so that it would be easy for within the community to have a good criteria or good reason for comparison. Oh, when these guys were here, this happened, or this was how things went. Now we have this other side. So that was for one, but for the others, it didn't really matter, just so long as they are indigenous, and indigenous meant at least 51% shareholding had to be by Nigerians, or by a Nigerian or Nigerians, whatever be the case. So, and then one of the indigenous also is listed on the UK Stock Exchange, the London Stock Exchange. So that's also something to also show, okay, this is an indigenous corporation, but it has shareholders outside of Nigeria. How does that also affect anything or something? So those were just the little bit of differences I decided would be useful to also give an insight on how things worked. And really, for the company, for the indigenous company that is listed on the UK Stock Exchange, one of the interviewees in a conversation we had, he said, oh, because we're listed on so exchange, and so pension fund is a shareholder. And we can't have these and do what some of these other indigenous corporations do. If you see what some of these people do and get away with it, we cannot do it because we're being looked at this end. So that also made an impact. It made a difference in what I was talking about the multinationals. So they are also being looked at by their parent companies out there, the shareholders, the NGOs and stuff like that.
Yeah, thank you for the answer. The reason I asked is because, we have COP27 coming up and a lot of the focus has been on the outside, the external, what, the developed countries are doing. And sometimes we have to look inwards to see. Yeah, thank you very much for that.
Thank you for asking the question too.
And Grace, how how Nigeria works with the category of indigenous? Like, what do you have to do to be recognized as indigenous? Or
the shareholding of that company has to be at least 51% of the shareholding must be by Nigerians or by a Nigerian if you are financially able, but it has to be Nigerian owned. So like for the company that is listed outside, it cannot be listed for more than 49%. It could be less, but at least maximum of 49% could be held by shareholders elsewhere. But 51, meaning it's majority of Nigerians own the company.
And just by being Nigerian, you get like the sort of indigenous?
Nigerian owned. That's owned by Nigerians. This company must be owned by Nigerians. Yeah, 51% of the shareholding must belong to Nigerian citizens. Yeah.
So interesting, because in Chile, to get like the recognition from the state that you are indigenous, you have to present papers and like prove that your family or yourself are tied to certain like types of indigenous people. So yeah, I was asking.
No, it doesn't have to be indigenous, as in not local communities where these oil operations happen. But one of these indigenous companies actually was from, or is from one of the communities where the oil and gas operations are carried out. One of them is by one man. And before I actually even started interviews, after collecting documentary data from their website, before interviews began, that particular company, I couldn't get one person to interview from it. And then I heard that they had gone bankrupt. So I don't know for sure, but some of one NGO interviewee and one other multinational interviewee hinted that that company had folded up. And the reason being CSR, in his locality where this operation was being carried out, he didn't take care of the people there, but he went to the north because it's the Northerners that are ruling, right? Ruling party. He went there, did many projects, hoping to get curry favor from the government. And I think it didn't pan out well the way he expected. And now the company is grounded. So I couldn't even interview anyone. People had been laid off, lost their jobs and all. So the CSR is more for curry favor, for government to get another concession or to get another field. But if it doesn't work out for you at the end of the day, then all of the investments you made there is gone. Maybe it's all from, at the end of, most times all this financing is bank loans, because there's a lot of money for oil drilling, right? So maybe they couldn't even fund or finance the pay back the loans they took out to carry on the business.
Well, it's 12:30. We still have one more question. And if there's no more questions, I'll finish the panel. Thank you, Stan, for helping us today. So Carmen says, thank you very much for presenting these amazing research topics. My question is for Daniela. can the green agenda be compatible with El Buen Vivir since the extraction of lithium, for example, is considered as a key factor in realization of a new energy paradigm, but at the same time goes against El Buen Vivir? Thank you. So, well, I think that in a way the answer is already in the question. And I think that the green agenda, it's very much technological driven, and it still takes all like the let's say Western or modernity, coloniality divisions. So you have individuals instead of communities, right? You can separate that. You have nature and you have society, and I think those abstract divisions that you can make with your mind cannot be made when you consider Buen Vivir, right? So for me, I think that if we don't question the amount of like energy, the energy patterns that we need to carry on this type of life, these styles of consumption, of living in general, there's going to be nothing, not only as a green agenda or a green transition to go to, because we're still demanding so much energy and materialities from Earth. Whereas you'll have Buen Vivir that's, it's not technologically driven, it's reliant on patterns of life that are way less energy, or that required less energy consumption and therefore material consumption. And I'm speaking about energy like in the physics sense, so everything can be translated to energy. So for me, the main issue with lithium extraction is that it's not questioning and the energy transition broadly, is that when technologically driven, it's not questioning the deep roots that took us to this point where we need to change everything because we are consuming, I think, like our rate of consumption is like 2 or 3 Earths by year. So yeah, I think the answer will be no for all of those reasons. So I really think that lithium extraction allows us to understand that if we follow the same patterns and we continue to damage environments to bring modernity to urban places, right? I think we're just going for the same path that we have been doing for the last 100, 200 years, right? Well, so thank you all very much. It was a really interesting panel. Very nice meeting you, Grace, Khadija, and thank you very much to Carmen and Angie for being here, and hope you also enjoy the panel. So thank you very much, and well, hopefully we'll see each other in some other time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, bye.